All right, all right. Hello, hello. My name is Alex Burkett. I'm the co-founder of Omniscient Digital. Stoked to be hosting today, hosting Ronnie Higgins on media marketing. I'm incredibly excited for this talk today, but let's just let some people roll in, huh? We've got, I think, a couple dozen coming in now. Welcome, everyone. If you could, we've got this chat on the lower right-hand side. If you type in to everyone, maybe introduce yourself, say your name, where you're calling in from. And I always like to ask like what book you're reading. So for me, my name is Alex Burkett. Oh, and what company you work for. Co-founder at Omniscient Digital. I just got back to Austin, Texas, where I live. Wildly jet lagged. Came in from Hawaii last night. So you've got a 5-hour time difference. So I'm kind of acclimating back today. And I actually just finished a book. I finished Talent by Tyler Cowen and Daniel Gross. Easily the best book I've ever read on finding and identifying talent and hiring people. So that was awesome. All right. Looks like we've got a ton of people rolling in here. Ooh, another Austin, Texas. Nice. I feel like we finally, I just got back like yesterday, and I feel like we finally got less than 100-degree temperatures, which has been very welcoming. Got that rain. Finally. Yeah, it's been a wild summer here. How to Be Perfect. You'll have to tell me about that one, Ronnie. Oh, yeah. Tommy Multipliers is, I think, it's one of the top leadership books I've read. I can't think of a better one. Just gave a very simple and cool framework for management and leadership. All right. I think, we can get started. We're going to send the recording out anyway. You're probably tired of me rambling and ready to get into the meat of the show. So with that said, I will do a very quick introduction for our speaker. Let me get this file here. All right. So today we've got Ronnie Higgins. The workshop is titled How to Think, Not Just Build, How to Think About Building a Media Company. And the talk today is going to be about the following. So every company is a media company. It's a popular thing you hear nowadays, but what does that really mean? In this workshop, you're going to learn what it truly means to think like a media company and why it's more important than ever to do so. So our speaker, Ronnie Higgins, was the former director of content marketing at Hopin. He is a veteran content marketing leader and has worked for brands like Hopin, Eventbrite, Udemy, Dovetail, and more. New Orleans born and San Francisco based, he uses his background in film and broadcast television to craft multimedia content strategies that build strong brand affinity and fuel sustainable revenue growth for companies he works for and advises. All right. Take it away, Ronnie.
Thanks, everybody. So before I pull it up, just wanted to put a face to the name since you're going to see my presentation for the most part. So thank you all for being here today. If you saw my LinkedIn and Twitter promotions this week, this is something I've been working on for a very long time. I actually spent the last month working on this mostly because I wanted to work on some resources that would take content marketing back to what it's supposed to be, which is a media company. So without further ado, let's get started. So today's agenda. This is actually just a joke. This is not today's agenda. It's totally a fake agenda. One of the things that's bothered me the most about the idea of build a media company is that it's just a platitude. It's an inspiring platitude, trust me, but for all intents and purposes, it's a platitude. We always talk about all these things in marketing. Marketing is always looking for the next best thing. And what I promise to do here today is give you a platitude-free workshop. So as Alex said, we're hearing it everywhere. Every company is becoming a media company. So I was really curious about this about a month ago. Like, what do other people think? So I asked a lot of people on Twitter, LinkedIn, and I got things like, a newsletter like The Hustle, documentaries and podcasts like MailChimp, creative social media like Gong, quality editorial like Intercom. Thing is by definition, yes, all of those are media companies. Let you read it here. And if you think about it also, by definition, so are most of, at least all of us. If you have a blog, you post a social, you are a media company. So congrats, you're a media company. Thing is, it's not just you. It's your direct competitors, your indirect competitors, actual media companies. But here's the real stickler. It's also indie YouTubers, TikTokers, bloggers. It's mommy bloggers, the teenagers down the street that have TikTok accounts. You are competing against all of those, which is why, more than ever, it's we need to just stop saying or every company's becoming a media company and start realizing that everybody is already a media company. And this is important because we need to like stop haphazardly, thinking about building a media company and instead think like one, not just build one. So let's get started. I thought about calling these virtues, but that just felt just pretentious. Principles also just felt awkward. So we'll call them whatever you feel comfortable calling them. But for me, the next four things that I'm going to go through are about what it means to think like a media company. So first, the objective. Your objective is to earn attention, then monetize it. All of you know that you already know this. You just already know. You publish the SEO so you can earn attention and then monetize it. You get people to come to your site, make money, and buy something. And so the thing is this needs to be said because your share of attention determines how much demand you can actually generate. So little concentric circles here. You have the market, and how much attention of the market determines how much demand you can create. This is important because when you don't have a lot of attention, you have a smaller slice of demand, or the smaller amount of demand you can generate. Content marketers, rarely talk about this, but media companies do. Why? Well, fun fact, the average American, I tried to find worldwide, global statistic, but the average American consumes about 10 hours of media a day. How much do you think is spent on your marketing content? Now, this little 0.001% is actually a little I forget the word right here, but like I'm just being nice. It's actually less than that because you can actually do this. Go into your web analytics, Google Analytics or whatever. Look at how many sessions per user you have in a given year and what is the average session duration. It's likely only like somewhere between 2 and 7 minutes in an entire year. Anyways, the takeaway here is that you want to grow your share of attention. This is what media companies do. They know that they have to grow that in order to generate demand. Next is right for humans. Now, I feel like I'm getting messages. 1 second. Nope, just lots of bloop. So the next thing is your audience is a human being. Now, I know this sounds like the whole create for humans, not robots thing. But while that had very good intentions, unfortunately, it's a platitude. Reason being is yes, you're writing for humans, but even if you've done this in earnest, when I look at most content marketing, I realize that we're kind of neglecting what differentiates us from machine. See, humans are logical. This is where so much content focuses. We focus on what's the information that someone needs. They need to know about this topic. They need to know how to do this thing. We need to give them this data. That's all logical. But media companies cater to these other things, the emotional side of it. Why do we need it? We need, we're stressed out. We need to accomplish something. We need to feel happy. We're also social. What is the social reasons for content? When someone shares a piece of content with someone, there's a social reason behind that. And media companies understand this. Case in point, this is BuzzFeed's cultural cartography. Each little circle here represents the gamut of reasons that people consume content. Most of what constitutes content marketing focuses on some of those little green ones, like, oh, I can actually do this. Goals. Oh, knowledge share. Teach me something. Tell me a story. But what we don't do is we don't do things like helping people feel seen, helping people feel like they found their tribe, their fandom, helping people laugh, making sure people connect with other people, helping people like understand that they need it. How do you feed their curiosity? How do you help them experience something vicariously? This is something that media companies understand. They understand that content has many use cases. The takeaway here is don't half-ass your research. Dive in deep. Get to know all of the reasons that your content and your media play a role in someone's life. All right, next medium is the message. This is a phrase that Marshall McLuhan had basically came up with in the 1960s. And it means that every medium delivers information in its own unique way, which fundamentally shapes how the message of the content is received. To help you understand this is like, first, there are four media roles. There are only three that I'm going to talk about today. The first is entertainment. Media can be an escape from our reality and fuel our imagination. Education. We all know this. It's pretty much what most content marketing is today. It is the education. Sometimes it's entertaining. Sesame Street blends entertainment with education. And then there's the public forum. So media can be a means of public discourse and self-expression. Letters to the editor, for example, or a social media poll. So not all mediums are created different. Text has some advantages over audio and video. Some of them have advantages. Both of them have advantages over, say, the interactive. Interactive has advantages over all of them. Books, for example, take longer to produce and are longer to consume. Periodicals, not as long to produce, not as long to consume. Videos are a fast-paced medium. They can deliver information really fast. But compared to an audio podcast like audio, if you aren't thinking about how someone's attention can be broken, you're going to end up losing someone. Someone won't be able to rewind. The fast-paced nature of these also mean that they can't go as in depth as a book or a periodical. And then there's events and social media. I'm a little tongue in cheek there with the MySpace logo because I didn't want to use just Facebook. Is that, these are not just about consuming content, but discussing content, sharing ideas, sharing opinions. And the basic takeaway here is that we need to start using these mediums appropriately, understanding the language that they each have and understanding their limitations. Instead of just like, oh, I'm going to be a media company because now I have a podcast, or now I have an event, or now I have documentaries. No, you need to understand how each one of these actually works to do it right. All right, so this is probably the most important. If you take anything away from this workshop today, please, please, please let it be this. Your content is a product. What do I mean by this? So unfortunately, the marketing part of content marketing has led us astray. It's a misnomer. If we were thinking like a media company, say Condé Nast or the Walt Disney Company, we would be thinking content is our business. It is everything. We can't survive without our content. If both of these companies stopped publishing content today, they would no longer be in business tomorrow. So it's a mindset that helps you see content completely differently. You see it as like it has a need to be carefully curated and carefully created to earn attention, to build affinity, to gain trust, and ultimately encourage reciprocity. So whether that's, hey, share this for us, hey, stick around and consume more content, or as we all know in marketing, give us your money or your business, if we're going to say it in a non-nefarious way. But one thing is like media companies like don't just see their content as like one-off stuff to be produced. They see it like very differently. They see it as like their operation. This is Walt Disney's 1957 corporate strategy. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it here. In 1957, Walt Disney wanted to outline how all of his properties, from the theatrical films, television shows, music, merchandising, publications, and then their theme parks, all worked together. This was next level in 1957. Compared to what most of us do in content marketing today, it's still next level in 2022. So those are the ways to think like a media company. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time to show you some ways to build a media company, because you were promised some actionable steps from Alex, and like a Lannister, I pay my debts. Orbs, orbits, and stages. So this is the Orb Framework. It's something that I actually had in mind my entire content marketing career, but it wasn't until a couple of years ago that Corey Haynes showed this to the world and said, here's the Orb Framework. And I was like mind blown that someone actually put it together in a like framework for me instead of some messy thing. The idea is that you need to think of your the landscape of where all of your content and media is consumed as properties that are divided into owned, rented, and borrowed. Your owned is your blog, media hub. It's your email list, your brand community. It's a podcast. It's anywhere that you have a direct relationship with your audience. This makes more sense when I describe rented. This is LinkedIn, Twitter, all the social media platforms, a platform like TikTok, interest-based ones like TikTok and YouTube. These are subject to algorithms, distribution, rank, and other external factors. And then there's borrowed. I used to call this other people's property, just to play off of the Naughty by Nature song, OPP. This is essentially everything that's out of your control. This is other publications, influencers, partner social, and then other communities. A way to think about this is also just going back to your audience, and because your audience is everything when it comes to your content and your media. And so you have the market. Your market is anybody who can possibly consume your content. But then what you do is, as soon as people have started to consume your content, they are your audience. So you've gained some of the market. But the thing is that doesn't mean anything. If you look at your analytics, how many people are return visitors? How many times does someone, consume one piece of content and then disappear into the ether? The next step is fandom. You can call this fandom, communities. You can call them like engaged, returning visitors, subscribers. The idea is this is the share of your audience who regularly consume your content and regularly share your content with others. Rand Fishkin calls these your amplifiers, the people who constantly seek out your content. And then there's customers. Customers are the share of audience who pays for your actual product or service. So where does this all go? Where this is going is funnel stages versus it's supposed to be awareness stages. I'll fix that when I send out the deck. So tired labeling your content as top of the funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. I have a problem with this because let's just go. Case studies, bottom of the funnel, middle of the funnel. Can bottom of the funnel content be thought leadership, or is that just top of the funnel? Is it okay to mention the product in top of funnel content, or is that a cardinal sin? Ask around, everyone's going to have a different answer here. And the reason is because the funnel doesn't exist. It's a useful construct when discussing some aspects of marketing, but it's a completely inadequate way to organize content, in my opinion. Here's what I think is wired. Noting audience product awareness stage. So when we talk about the funnel, we're actually describing the buyer journey, which is pretty complex. It's a complex, non-linear, like crazy conspiracy theory looking chart that starts with problem identification and then ends at purchase. Everything that we as content marketers publish today is trying to target that problem identification. Everything that we do with SEO is like, hey, if we could create enough content that will capture people during the problem identification stage, we may be able to lay a breadcrumb trail from that to our product and to purchase. And sometimes that journey is 2-day journey. Sometimes it's a multi-year journey. And when you note the product awareness stage of the audience for each piece of content, which is unaware, problem aware, solution aware, and product aware, so going from bottom to top, we can objectively decide what's appropriate for the content we're creating. Want to mention the product in a meme? As long as it's appropriate, you do you. Audience cultural cartography. So with this is, you probably do this. If not, it is the most important thing that you can do as a content marketer and to build a media company, is to have an ideal customer profile. This is not a demographic of like some random stock photo of a lady and saying like, you know, she likes to sew or whatever. This is like getting down to the traits that matter at the bottom of the funnel. So what are the characteristics and traits? Revenue size, industry, department, growth rate, etc. Buyer committee roles. So if you're in enterprise software or targeting enterprise, this is very appropriate. Who's the decision maker? Who's the budget holder? Who's the champion? Who are the blockers, and who are the users? You need to create content for all of them because they're all part of that decision. And then there's the product use cases. What are the pain points? What are the features? What are the workarounds? And then it's always helpful to know what else is in their tech stack. This will allow you to think of who else can you be partnering with. Is there someone who, you know, complements, who has a similar audience but a different product? From there, you want to understand media habits. So most people stop at the whole topics part, and they even usually, you know, stop short of what people search for. But what do people talk about? Sometimes there's a lot of stuff that I talk about that I don't go searching on Google for. What is that? That's one thing that will help you become a media company. Sources. Where do people consume content? Who influences them the most? For this is like going to SparkToro and understanding like who are the people that people follow. When you want to understand what people talk about also, that's also SparkToro. Mediums. What formats do people prefer to consume and why? So once you do a whole sort of 360 on the topics and the sources, you'll have to pay really close attention to what mediums are consumed in those different channels and in those different places. This is where zero-click content from Amanda Natividad comes in. Because when you understand that platform native content mediums, you'll be able to create all of it. And then genres. So what forms do people gravitate to? So instead of it just being tackling the topic, is it tackling the topic in a way that it makes it feel like a game show or an advice column or something else? Like there's so many different ways to slice and dice content and to create, and you want to understand it, what is special about the way that content is being presented. The end goal of all of this is to create an influence map. Now, I never called it an influence map. I always call it just the buyer journey. But Rand Fishkin, to his credit, started working on this So I want to give a shout out to him. He organizes it a little bit differently, but the idea is you break up the buyer journey by all of the different stages from unaware to product aware. You then decide what are the messages that you need to send at each, what is the medium that you need to use, and then what is the source? Where is this going to be consumed? What you can also do right away is start doing this in your, if you want to increase the sort of value of your content roadmap as it is today, go beyond teach me, inform me. Start thinking of ways that your content can create that feeling of, oh, I feel validated, or I feel challenged. I can do this. Oh, this connected me. Oh, this inspired me. This amused me. This showed me something. I felt like I lived vicariously through something. Next is media franchise strategy. So look at my time. I need to hurry up. Whoops, went a little too far here. So with media strategy, it's simple. The idea of this is to create intellectual property. Most content marketing libraries are a smorgasbord of formats and topics. And that's because most content marketing strategies focus on like one-offs. They might think of pillars, topic pillars, but it's still just like a bunch of content. It's like walking into a very massive library. You need to like go through the Dewey Decimal System, like search for your book, and that's like friction. What you want to do here is what this is doing, and is when everybody's doing this, when everybody's a media company and everyone has a blog media hub that has all this stuff organized by formats and topics, nothing stands out, but more importantly, nothing gives anybody a reason to return. And this is what franchises do. Franchises are designed to solve this. Even if it's just one type of content, think about this. Audiences expect the New York Times to publish a new crossword puzzle or Wordle puzzle every day. And that keeps everybody coming back, keeps everyone thinking about New York Times. It helps subscribers remember that they're subscribed. They're also valuable. They also show value to stakeholders. So not just the audience, but for business leaders. Case in point, MCU versus DCEU worldwide box office. The Marvel Studios has released 23 films with a $6 million budget and has made $27 billion in profit in box office. DC, on the other hand, has 10 films and 5 million, with basically a 210% return on investment. Now, I'm sure you would take either one of these, but it just goes to show you that the consistency in the planning and the franchise strategy of Marvel is much stronger than DC's at the moment. Hopefully that'll change soon because DC's got some cool stuff. Another example, a little more timely, the first episode of Game of Thrones versus the first episode of House of Dragon. So this is the idea of sequels and spin-offs. You end up carrying an audience from one to the other. So Game of Thrones to House of Dragon. Now, what these things are doing is essentially they're creating long-term value and they're offering a sense of predictability. That is like the biggest takeaway for this right now. So sounds crazy, but you don't have to be Marvel or Disney or anybody. You just start small. Don't overthink this. You likely have a bunch of blog posts, ebooks, templates, and other resources. Instead of it just being a bunch of resources, call it a resource library. Lattice does this really well. They take all of their stuff and it's in a library. It's not a blog, it's a library. From there, you can actually start thinking about other different pieces of franchises. So you might have a monthly newsletter or a wiki glossary. You might even have feature stories about that don't mention the product, but are about people and how they are the hero of their own story. You might have an advice column. You might have a daily tip newsletter that gets emailed out every day, a little short little tip. So you might see all this and go, great, sounds expensive. Well, here's the thing. Not if you have strategic content optimization at your side. So we all hear about repurpose, remix, and refresh, but that's supposed to be like. I should have had someone else look at this before. But the idea here is that your featured stories add context and like real people to your resource library. Your blog posts become not copycat content, but they actually have like stuff in them that's very proprietary. Your resource library then fuels your wiki glossary. All of it feeds your advice column, which feeds your daily tip. And then all of that goes into your monthly newsletter. So it's not like you need to go and hire 10 more people and start publishing 50 different things from scratch. This is just written content, by the way. This then is like the foundation of then when you add in events, shows, and start doing all these different things, you start to think about how does it all work together, just like Disney did. One of the things that I talked about earlier about how Game of Thrones and House of Dragon is part of a media programming strategy. There's a bunch of different ones. So like bridging is what that is. It's the practice of encouraging an audience from one program to consume the next. Stripping. This is not what you think it would be. It's actually running a single series in a consistent time slot. You know, every day there's going to be a new Wordle. You know that there's going to be, what time a piece of content is going to come out. Everyone knows when, almost trying to think of like when the Super Bowl is. Theming. This is the practice of dedicating all or parts of your schedule or your content calendar to a specific theme. So think of like Shark Week. And this is something that people look forward to. It's grown over time. And then cross-programming is the practice of interconnecting two or more programs. You can learn all about this. Just Google broadcast programming, and there's a lot of stuff. And then when I send out the deck, I'm going to put some resources in there for everyone to look through. The hardest part about all of this, and I know I need to hurry up, is content's sort of siloed today. Is you have PMM doing content, you have brand doing content, social doing content, community doing content, PR comms doing content, events, email. Oh my. If you want to do franchises right, you need to get everybody working on, together. And this is the hardest part because it's all like politics. It's something that you need to like work together, build a strategy that shows that everyone has a retrospective at the same time, that kicks off a integrated planning process that then looks at all of the different pieces and the messages that need to be created for that entire influence map, and deciding how does it all work together to create it all efficiently using atomization. Next is attention monetization tracking. So attribution is political. This is something a lot of people don't say. They talk about how like, oh, you just need to do, multi-touch attribution. Well, that's easier said than done. Some people are going to want more credit for certain things. So I'm going to ignore the idea of attribution and just talk about some basic ideas that you need to think of. So orbit performance. At the very basic, what you want to do is you want to measure the growth of your audience, your fandom, whatever you want to call it, and your customers. The growth in the ratio between these. So like the how much audience per how much of your fandom audience's fandom and customers should grow at the same rate. The idea is that you want to capture more attention, increase that fandom, and increase customers. So are they moving down this funnel, so to speak? Next is content performance. Honestly, there's so many different ways to measure content performance. Everyone talks about vanity metrics, and to be honest, other than revenue, and I think all of them are vanity metrics. And what matters is that you are tracking the entire everything possible. And instead of it being an attribution platform, this is what you do. You look at when you're triaging your media strategy. This is what you look at to see, is everything working? If I, publish less, will I still generate as much revenue? If you're not generating as many leads, what is it further up the funnel that's happening? Or do you have a lower return visitor rate, which is what RVR stands for? Then it's return on investment. So here's how I like to talk to executives about return on investment. For the past few years, CMOs and marketing leaders have spent millions, sometimes even billions on paid advertising. So paid search, paid display. They don't spend a lot on content, at least not really. And what people need to understand is that, yes, you're spending $2,000 on an ebook today. So technically, like, that is 2,000, if you publish that at the end of Q1, that is a $2,000 per click, which is freaking ridiculous. But over time, the more clicks that piece of content gets, the less that the cost per click, to eventually, the more traffic a piece of content gets over time, the less money it ends up getting its return on investment, and ends up in a positive way. Long story short, though, is you just need to pay attention to your budget and make sure that you are getting a satisfactory return on investment. So as you are watching your audience grow, your fandom grow, and your customers grow, and making sure that that ratio is in balance, as long as it's generating a favorable ROI, you've got everybody's going to be happy. And this is something that I don't think is going to be easy to figure out, and there's no guaranteed standardized way. But I think that together we can start working on, how do we standardize this. That's my call to action, essentially, to all of you. So to recap, everybody's already a media company. Your objective is to earn attention, then monetize it. Your audience is a human being. Your medium is the message. Your content is a product. And then you just want to create predictability with franchises. And thanks. And in case my curse of knowledge got the best of me, any questions?
Thank you so much, Ron. I loved your point on attribution being political. Just wanted to say that. Also a hobby horse of mine. So we do have some good questions. Two, I think, of the top ones are from Tommy. So let's start with what's your best advice for getting your content to infiltrate audience networks?
So the best thing to do is to build that influence map. So in fact, the best thing to do is, instead of it being like the influence map that Rand Fishkin created that I showed, maybe even thinking about it like the Orb Framework. So you think about, what are all the channels, places that your audience is consuming content? Is it in a Slack group like Superpath? Is it a platform like the Juice? Or is it search and all these other places? And you figure out that, and then you can say, all right, what are the mediums and the genres that are being consumed there? What resonates in those places? What gets shared? So you do a little bit of research to analyze that. And if you know how to then atomize the content that lives on your own property, so you have an ebook, or let's say you do a webinar, that's where the whole little clips and stuff, and maybe even taking your webinar and turning it into a tip sheet or checklist, and things that will easily spread. So the whole thing is, you're looking at the landscape of your audience's media consumption and their habits, and you are aligning everything to that. If it's a meme, it's a meme. If it's a 10-hour-long podcast, it's a 10-hour-long podcast they need. And you can only determine that by analyzing, doing the audience research, and just plotting out all of the different mediums that everyone's consuming and where. And that'll help people share.
And then for a follow-up from me on that one, I would imagine that you would want to be keeping a pulse on this landscape of what the audience is consuming. I would imagine you'd want to do that regularly, right? Because I don't know, how often do those things change? Like, obviously mediums can change. Like, maybe people listen to more podcasts now than they used to. But also, it's like, maybe this blog was popular 2 years ago, and now a new one's popular, like this community rose. So is that something that you kind of regularly keep in touch with through interviews, or how do you approach that?
You should always be paying attention to it, but how often do you need to refresh your source of truth or your strategy? The famous answer, it depends. There are some audiences that stay static. I mean, for a while, you only had to worry about 5 social networks or 5 platforms, and now there's freaking a whole bunch of them. But for a few years, you didn't have to think too much about where everybody was. You knew they were on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So it's about paying attention and just being ready to update and just at least do a pulse check on what you have. If anything, when you do your quarterly planning, make it a step in that process. Look and see, if you have a subscription to SparkToro, see if anything's changed.
Cool. Another one from Tommy, this one more on the productivity side of things. How do you recommend scaling your time to get all this stuff done?
So I'm about to start a new job. Can't give any details just yet. We'll announce that next week. Essentially, I focus on how to make, what can I prove? So a lot of people think of media companies like the creative stuff that sits somewhere else, some microsite, branded microsite with high quality editorial. And to me, it's all of it's the media company, right? But unlike an actual media company, our revenue engine is what drives business. So you got to build that first. And so at the place that I'm going to be starting, that is where the first workshop we're going to have is we're going to outline, do we have everything that we need to support the product growth? And not just acquisition, but retention of those customers. Because once you have that, that is your ad engine for your media company. Because from there, you then also have all the stuff that will turn into the meme that maybe mentions the product without trying to sell. You'll have all those resources and you'll know how to lay a breadcrumb trail all the way to that. So starting there, and then starting with written content. I mean, everyone does written content because of how, let's say, it's less expensive to do. You don't need a bunch of different things to go right. But from written content, then doing video, because then your video can also be your audio. Just like you all turn these things, tend to turn things like this into a podcast. You want to make sure you're setting yourself up there. And as I said with the franchises, just start somewhere. Turn your current education content into a resource library, and then figure out how to create a franchise on top of that is still education, but maybe a little bit more entertainment. Think about Sesame Street. Think about a really good education example is PBS's why am I blanking? It's PBS Studios, and it's Crash Course with John Green, Hank Green. They make that stuff entertaining. How can you do a too long didn't read version of something and help people feel in that video? You can even do really quickly in Canva, and you can then post that somewhere. So creating sort of too long didn't read videos that you can even embed in your written content, and if it's posted on YouTube, that improves the SEO. So
right on. Okay, so one on ideation, if you're in a new category. So if you're working in a fairly new category, for example, Web3 design, how do you find inspiration for creating unique and more content in a field if there isn't a lot out there already?
this is something that I ran into at Dovetail. So I didn't work at Dovetail. I advised Dovetail on their content strategy, when they were Series A. And what they had was they had a very unique product. Their unique product it would have taken them forever to build the SEO for, and wouldn't have really moved the needle. So we needed to find a strategy that helped get them on the map, which is what this sounds like. And so instead of doing how-tos, I said, this is where the whole social, the public forum role of media comes into play. And so you want to tap into the practitioners who also are the thought leaders, the subject matter experts. And you want to create something that, think of your content as the metaphorical water cooler, where everyone shares their war stories, where everyone shares their perspective on what is this, where is it going, and then over time you can turn that into your, let's call it your, you've got problems, we've got solutions content.
Cool. Do you have time for one more?
Oh yeah, got plenty of time.
Okay, cool. So a lot of mediums were mentioned: podcast, newsletter, TikTok, etc. What's a framework for thinking about choosing the right mediums, in quotes, or at least a starting point in producing content for all of them with limited resources?
It's a really good question. So first, I mean, think about what is it that's going to do the job. So I said that books, they take longer to consume, and but they can also cover a topic more in depth than a video. The fast-paced nature of video and television and movies means that a topic doesn't get consumed more or covered more in depth. It's the reason that everyone talks about, it was David Foster Wallace who said that, people complain about, TV's rotten people's brains, but what they don't realize, it's not the like cartoons and sitcoms. It's actually the fact that your news now is just like sensational. It's about events and not about like processes or anything. And so just understanding that based on your goal, because at the end of the day, business strategy dictates content strategy, media strategy. So what does your business need to achieve? And then how does the different mediums choose work to that advantage? And then back to what I said earlier is, what is everyone else consuming? Because while yes, it might seem appropriate for you to do a like long ebook white paper, no one's going to share that. So what are the pieces of content and mediums that people are sharing, and how do you tap into that and then figure out a way to like do like a sweet spot in the middle?
I love it. Well, thanks again so much, Ronnie. This presentation was incredible. I think it added a lot of clarity for me on building a media company, and it's something that, clearly we're looking into ourselves. So thank you again. And for everyone still on, I just have two announcements. If you could take our survey, Carissa's going to post that, I believe, in the chat, and we'll also send it out via email with our recording. We're going to send the recording out to everybody. And then the other thing is we're doing a larger 3-day event in October called Road to Mastery. And Carissa will also pop the link in for that event. That's going to be 6 speakers, some entertainers. And the theme is one that I very much care about. It's converting with content. So we're going to have some conversion optimization and experimentation experts, content marketing experts, etc. And we're going to dive deep in that theme. So that's all I've got. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Hope this was valuable. We will send the survey out. We'll send the recording out. Thank you very much.